The first thing we want to do is make sure everybody has pad, a notepad, and a pen to write with, to take notes with. If you don't, just raise your hand and somebody will get you one. And we want to move into just introducing our panelists, which we're going to spend a short amount of time on. And then I'm going to kind of go over the kind of guidelines and the format of the discussion. And then we're going to jump right into it. We're not going to waste much time on the introduction, on the fancy, sentimental introductions or nothing like that. My name is Brian Casoro, the editor of the Minneapolis Liberator, but that's really not a large part of what's going on today. Today is a wholly organic community function, so I'm here as a community member, as opposed to any title or position person. The first thing I want to do is throw it to the panelists and just have everyone introduce themselves in just a few sentences, just kind of introduce folks and let them know who you are. Start with Demetrius on the left.
How y'all doing? My name is Demetrius, Minneapolis native representative.
My name is Shaka Kali, team program coordinator at Whole Community.
I'm Mahmoud el-kati. I live in St. Paul.
My name is Keith Mays, professor of African American Studies at the University of Minnesota, and originally native of New York City. I see one of my students in
Daryl Young for Northside Minneapolis.
All right, appreciate it. The moderators for today will be myself and Shelly Martin right here. We'll be trying to guide the discussion and keep it flowing as much as possible. Basically, it's going to be an open discussion. The moderators, we're going to open the floor after each question to y'all. Basically, we're going to pose a broad topic, throw it to the panelists, and invite y'all to come up to the mic or, from where you are and give your input or ask questions to the panelists, and vice versa. You know what I mean? If y'all got questions for people in the audience, feel free. Gail Smaller right here is going to try to hold down, a line and keep it, cordial back here as far as people wanting to get up on the mic. And we're going to try to get at least between 5 and 10 people in from the audience on each, broad topic that I just mentioned. And that's basically the way it's going to work. So we're going to start right now with explaining the 4 main topic areas that we want to discuss today. For the second one has 2 parts. But the first one is the most obvious. And we're going to start with what is happening, what has happened in our community this summer. If you want to even go broadly or historically, that's fine. But we want to define, we want to place ourselves in a proper starting place, basically. Then we want to ask the next obvious question is, why is that happening? The things after we define what's happening, we're going to challenge ourselves and ask why. And then we might find that that has a second part to it, and some steps that we can take from here. Obvious place to start. When something goes wrong or when something isn't feeling right, I think the most obvious thing to ask ourselves is, what's going on? Where am I at? Where do I find myself in this chaos, if that's what I perceive it to be? And really, if you don't ask yourself that, then you really can't move towards, getting yourself out of it or challenging it. And so that's really what we're going to start off with, asking the panelists and you all, what is happening, what has happened? And what we're going to do after each question also is have somebody in the audience who kind of staged, kind of give out kind of like a suggested feedback answer to kind of get it going and to kind of just make sure we all understand what exactly is being asked. So right now, Vet is right here, and she's going to provide kind of a test answer, kind of a, just to kind of heat it up and get us going, and then we're going to throw it to the panelists, and then we're going to open up to the audience.
One of the things that's happening in our community is the escalation of murders, mostly of young people, Anthony Baca, Brian Cole. And we want to start with, what's the root of this behavior? Is it anger, mistrust, insecurity? So that's one of the places we want to start.
So taking that, I just want to throw it to the panelists. Since Mahmoud has the microphone, you might as well go first. And the other thing we're going to try to do is limit it to about a minute or two per answer, just to kind of keep it flowing and make sure, we all are, collectively participating in this.
Okay, I just want to thank you for having this panel and allowing me to participate. That's a good sensibility on the part of you who are sponsoring this to include some older voices. That's one of our big problems today, is the intergenerational disconnect. And knowledge is separated from wisdom, and that's dangerous. So thank you for allowing some old schools. I guess there's only one old school to participate. Thank you very much. It's very sensitive on your part. The young lady who posed the question, I would say all of the above. This is a very complex question. My take is a little different from most people. I think that history produces everything. That's it. And that's where you look for that. The question I always pose to young people to answer, for the killing fields that's going on with 18, 20 to 30-year-olds, bloody. There's always been gangs, we know that, but the scale is different. The violence and horror stories that we read about every day. If you back up just a short generation, young people in the black community, that same community, were not killing one another. Nowhere near this scale. And there were no gun runners as openly gun running as they're doing now. I'm a child of the civil rights movement. I grew up in it. Can't help it. I know that the people in my generation and immediately after me were engaged generations. Engaged in what? In social struggle. Against what? Against racism. What is that? White supremacy. That's what I mean by racism. That's a simple way of saying a complex thing. That's what it was about. You back up 20, 25 years ago, young people were on the cutting edge of social struggle. It would have been very different if you didn't have the 16, 18, and 20, 24 years old engaged in struggle. Everybody admits that. Martin Luther King, Malcolm, that they were the difference. Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, black college students, brothers and sisters off the street, Black Panthers, who organized. It was the most organized community in America politically. It was the African American community, which was leading this country progressively. That's the black community. It was a black-led, multicultural, multiracial movement called the Civil Rights Movement, led by black people. And it was that way for 10 or 12 years. Martin Luther King, to the extent that you had a leader leading this country morally, he was here, not the president. He was actually leading America. Just check, read, you can see it. So the difference is we had an explosion of a lot of things, of knowledge, of politics, of political organization, and all of that was happened. And something like CONTELPRO, and you might want to talk about that, the FBI, the CIA, all these guys made this big movement against the movement and dismantled it. And now we have an implosion on our community. The explosion is now an implosion, and the same young people, everybody knows that young people supply the energy to anything, any movement. They're the source of creativity, not the wisdom, but the creativity. You're not going to have a movement without young people playing a significant role. And you can study it all over the world, in Western Europe, even in backward countries like Brazil. Students and young people were in the vanguard of social change. That's what scared the power structure to death. What's going to happen when this 15-year-old gets 35 or 40, and then he has children? What's going to happen when Fred Hampton's son grows up? You can see what it's doing. He's still at it. Anybody met Fred Hampton Jr.? Okay. Yeah, he's doing what his father's work. 21 years old, the mind of a 50-year-old man, scared this country to death, and they had to kill him. It's that simple. So it's all of these things getting above, and there's a reason for that, and I can't get into the details, but that's what I think. That there's a, I'm going to say this. James Baldwin, how many of you ever read him? Thank God. He said it best, and this is, I know it's a different time, 1964. He said, if I were teaching in this school or any other school where there were black children, the first thing I would try to get them to understand is the house that they live on, and the street that they live on, the school that they go to, the job that their parents go to, the policeman on the corner is all a part of a criminal conspiracy to destroy them. But I'd further try to get them to understand that the world is much bigger, more marvelous, and more terrible than anything they could ever imagine, but it's basically bigger, and it's there for them to explore.
I just want to remind, before Shaka takes his time, just want to remind y'all that while they're talking, if you have something to say, you can either come to the mic or just feel free to stand up or raise your hand, and we'll just, come back to you kind of in between them or after them.
What COINTELPRO did is take lots of leaders off of the street and put them in jail, broke whole families, and it broke the momentum, and for me coming into that, that's what I saw. I'm originally from Los Angeles, so I was able to see it from up close. I was able to see the crack when it started to come, through that whole Contra thing, and it's a systemic situation, and it takes a long way to kind of backtrack. For me, to kind of summarize it, the reason why we're in this situation right now is because of what happened in the past, but it also deals with anger, things of that nature, economics, housing, education, the gentrification. Like I said before when we were talking on the radio, if your housing is not in order, then that's going to be a major situation. Another thing is a lot of people who were involved in that whole crack wave, that were fiends and things of that nature, their children are growing up as well. For me, and I feel like that's also some of the things that we're dealing with. But for me, I've actually studied like the COINTELPRO to be able to figure out the kind of individual I am. I see something going on, and I really have to understand why is it that's going on, because I know that it's not just happenstance or haphazardly, it's strategic. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like once you can understand the parameters of what's going on, then better can you be able to address the actual situation. And I feel like a large portion of us are disconnected to the global politics that take place and don't necessarily know how policies abroad are affecting us, you know what I'm saying, right here and right now. So, I'm eventually continuing to chop it up, but my man broke it open quite lovely. And I feel like where I step in is, the generation after COINTELPRO, because what happened is when the gang started, at least with the Crips, they tried to emulate what the Black Panthers left, but there was nobody there to give them the blueprint. So what happened is it started to retard. And the thing that happened in California is around the time when the Black Panthers took place, there was no gang violence. Prior to that, the gangs that exist were groups like the Devil Killers to be able to combat the Spook Killers that were killing people in South Central, which was south of Los Angeles, south of Central Avenue where all the black people were. You know what I'm saying? So they definitely had to break that down because, as I said before, there was no violence in the community. And when the Crips came, it was an emulation, but they didn't have the structure. And then it just became retarded. And then also with the influx of the drugs and things of that nature. In Watts, when they would have the cargo trains filled with guns. Like I seen it, first of all, it's like the outsiders used to fight, then all of a sudden you start to hear foreign weaponry. Then you start to see people's parents that were upstanding start to smoke. Then you see certain parents start to sell. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like that is part of it, but I'm not going to take all the time.
What has been said, and I'm still processing a lot of these thoughts myself, so I'm just going to keep this one very short. One of the questions was what is happening, and I think that the strategic plan that was set up way back during the slave trade is now being put into place right now. Right now, it's playing out. So, like I said,
basically the way I look at the situation, as far as everything that's affecting the community, as far as a lot of murders that's taking place. Right now, we've grown up in a Pepsi generation for which everything is more glamour and glitz, the way I see it. So in the mind state of each individual growing up out here, if they see certain things on TV or they see certain things that an individual has on, they have a tendency to be like, oh, either I want that or I'm going to take it from them. And I believe that the lack of role models, if we had better role models in situations where we can talk to these individuals and be like, yo, that's not the way, man. You need to, you know what I'm saying, self-elevate yourself. I heard it best from Black Star when I was a young cat. Knowledge is self-determination. And if we don't step our mind game up, then we always going to be forever stuck. There are always going to be bad things taking place. There's never going to be a solution for it, bottom line. And if we can't step up to the plate and help these young people, or even the older people, because I know a lot of older dumb people. I mean, period. I mean, I'm a young man, and therefore, whenever I see a young cat or I see an older person, and I always try to school them. I grew up, you know what I'm saying, without no father. Barely knew my mom's. You know, just grew up through the foster care system. I mean, I've been through the struggle, but my struggle is no greater or no less than nobody in this room or outside this world. So I just try to keep my mind going and just try to help individuals spiritually, mentally, and physically. However I can help, I'm always going to be there and down. So what I can say is we just got to keep it moving, got to keep our faith in whoever we believe in. If it's a positive situation, then that's what we got to keep our mind at. But otherwise, I think bad things are still going to take place, even though we got individuals trying to make it happen as far as, you know what I'm saying, just taking care of our community. Because there's always an idiot, you know what I'm saying? That's just bottom line.
Yeah, so let's say real quick. Was it a question or a comment? Okay.
You want to wait?
Yeah, now slide it in real quick.
Okay, we're talking about what has happened and what's happening. In my opinion, I feel as though, like, I'm an 80 baby, I was born in 82. And it dawned on me one day that I don't know what the world is like without crack. I don't know what the world is like without AIDS. I didn't have any leaders. I didn't have a Malcolm. I didn't have a Martin. All the leaders that I knew of got shot and got killed. That's all I know is about leaders getting killed. You rise up, whether you're black, whether you're Gandhi, whatever, like, you get killed. That's what's happened. The children have been separated from the family. You know, and we've come to rely on each other. Like, I went to school with him, I went to school with him, her. It's like, there's a bunch of people in here that I went to school with. And we're the ones trying to put this together, but we need our elders. And we also need people like Brian, like Camille, like Shelly to bridge the gap between us and the generation after us, because it's going to do nothing but get worse. You know, when you separate a child from the family, what do they have to as a blueprint? You know, like me going into college and no one doing that before me, it's hard for me to manage and understand and have anybody to talk to because I have no blueprint. I have nobody I can go to. Okay, now I graduated, what do I do? You know, now the world is looking totally different. You know, we need to bridge that gap again. That is our problem. That's why these kids don't have role models. That's why these kids are out here doing the things that they're doing. And that's why a lot of people in my generation are doing the same thing. Because we're not together. Everything starts from the family. It doesn't start outside the family. Everything starts from your home. These conversations are important because then you have to go home and you have to teach your nieces and nephews and your sons and daughters. You have to start at home. Me and him talked about this for years, me and Brian. We grew up together. His theory was, I get my circle together, you get your circle together, and then I turn around, do you need anything? Yeah, I got this. Here, take this. It's not always about being the biggest, hugest circle that you can be. Let's get our homes together. Let's get our lives together. Let's get our families together. And then we can come together, because right now we have too many issues going on. There's too many issues. You know, it's not like back in the 70s and the 60s where we could say, okay, this is what we want, let's go. There's so many issues that have been piled up. We need to take care of the little stuff in order to take care of the big stuff. We're looking outside when we need to look within. And that's mine.
And then Daryl, and then we'll come back to
within the home, within the families. I'm a child of the 80s. I was born in the late 60s, but I came up in the 80s, and I don't know Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. I don't know some of the great civil rights leaders firsthand, but I do know crack because I was born and raised in Harlem, hardcore New York City. I do know single-parent familyhood. I do know some of the things that some of the panelists mentioned, right? And so when we talk about the murders on the north side, I come up in a generation where I was faced with that. I don't know how many times I had guns pointed at me as a teenager. A lot, I know, it's everybody coming up in these kind of neighborhoods, right? So the question becomes, how do some make it out and how do some get caught up? One of the things that I haven't heard was that issues around policy, right? Because when I teach students at the U, one of the things I try to get them to understand is that there are policy implications to everything that we do, right? Mention housing, economics, education, etc. Those things are important. I can't even get to the point where I could feel that I'm effective in terms of how I deal with the students before me, because many of the students, many of you guys don't even make it to the youth, don't even make it to my class. We have to address that. What's going on in these neighborhoods that the kids are not even finishing school, right? So there's a disconnect within the families, right? Broken homes will produce what? Broken neighborhoods, broken communities, right? The communities, everything is broken. So it's not a question of whether the young people or the family members are responsible. They, in many ways, are responsible for their actions. But there's a larger issue at play, and that what are the structural forces at play in the communities, in the neighborhoods, in the city, in the nation that produces these conditions? And I think we have to address that. Absolutely.
I think it's two things. Not too long ago, probably like 3 weeks ago, I lost my little brother. He was murdered. You know what I'm saying? And that night, I had to sit here and think, what is the problem? And I work with kids, and I think two of the things I've seen is the focus. I ask shorties all the time, man, what's your focus? Their focus is how much they're gonna go get that drill for, how much they about to go get them courses for, but they're not really thinking about how to help themselves, how to help their families, help their community, you know what I'm saying? So, and another thing is, I think it's the respect between younger generation and older generation. Because when I was growing up on the block, if my mom's friend see me doing something wrong, they'll correct me about it. I had no choice but to respect that. You know what I'm saying? They're looking out for me, and it's not like that no more. You know what I'm saying? Like, I could come to the shorty like, yo, you wrong. You know, you should chill out. Slower. They come at me like, nah, I ain't gotta listen to you. They act like they're a grown man or a grown person, you know what I'm saying? So I think it is just the focus. Their focus is gone. They had nothing to, seem like they got nothing to live for. So we gotta help them see what, you know, give them a future or something. You know what I'm saying? So that's how I feel.
Brother Mahmoud have one.
Just because everything that everybody said is relevant, and the facts are there. Facts sometimes don't explain everything. If people don't speak for facts, facts don't speak for themselves. But there are two things I want to pose to you here. This is real now, real life. About 26 years ago, there were roughly 100,000 black men in America's prisons, jails, or whatever, workhouses. I said, what, 26 years. Today, there are over 2 million people in prison. The United States happens to have the country with the largest incarcerated population in the world. And there are 2 million people in prison. Almost half of them are black men. Now, I pose this question to you. Why do you think that is? When there were 100,000 just before some of you were born. Why is it that there's something called the prison industrial complex, addressed beautifully by Angela Davis, an activist from the 60s, of the relationship of making prisons private industry? Building prisons in small towns like Wasika, where I was called to a couple of years ago. I didn't even know they had a prison there. And then I asked the man, well, you know, my thing is, and I'm open about this, I'm not anti-anybody. I'm pro-human, pro-life, and I'm pro-black people first, because that's the way it is. I gotta be for me. Charity begins at home and then spreads abroad. I love humanity in the abstract, but I got to deal with what it is. And so I asked him, why would you call me? He said, well, I understand you do black culture and black history and that kind of stuff. I said, I certainly do. but what do you want me there for? He said, well, we got blacks and Latinos from Chicago. They make up half the population. I didn't even know that then. And that's all over America. And they count these people as a part of the population for representation in taxes. And won't allow them to vote. It's before our very eyes. There's a larger question I wish I could get to, and he alluded to policy, that we don't even talk about. That's responsible for a 14-year-old killing another 14-year-old. It's incredible that we don't understand. And we have been, not that people don't know stuff. And the last thing I want to say is, bottom line question for the black community is to build institutions. That's the bottom line. That's how you make people intergenerational. That's how you make people's behavior predictable through institutions. Most of our institutions, aside from the church and a few others, have been decimated. It used to be, I grew up like everybody else. There's home, church, school. They were intrinsically related. But they were black communities, by and large. The teacher knew what my grandmama knew. My grandmama wasn't that educated, but she knew what the teacher knew, and the preacher knew what all of them knew. And so there you go, what he was describing. When Miss Lucy told me to go home, I go home. That's my grandmother's friend. I don't say, I'm not going, you're not my grandmama. You don't say that. You just go home. That's called communal values, shared value system. See what I'm saying? So there's an answer. These are answerable questions, believe me. There's an answer for them, but we're nowhere near that because you're not talking to one another. First of all, you got this whole intergenerational split. Young people don't know why. They don't know who their heroes are. They don't know that the people working every day for you. And you're not going to see them on television, believe me. You're not going to see them. Not these kind of people. You don't know their names.
My generation is the biggest cause of the disconnect. We refuse to talk to you. We refuse to acknowledge you. We refuse to accept the fact that you are bright and you are our future. We refuse that. And one of the reasons we refuse that is we're scared that you might be smarter than us and you might move past us because of your struggle of 1980s of dealing with crack and dealing with broken homes. You'll be surprised, and you probably are not, how that kind of stress and that kind of trauma will make a person grow up fast. And a lot of you have grown up very fast. But because of the disconnect, there was something that we didn't give you. Each generation is supposed to give you something that you take to the next. And that's that piece, I think, that sometimes when you walk around, you got all this information, and you feel like there's one little piece missing. That's that piece we didn't give you. That piece of nurturing, that piece of love. See, I was just at a Supreme Court commission on drugs, and the woman said, what has been the drug that affected what currently is the drug that affects your community the most? And I said, well, first of all, I want to know what you mean by community, okay? Because we got many communities in the black community. Are you talking about the inner city community that you show on TV every day? Are you talking about the middle class community? Because we can talk about them too, about what they're not doing to help each other, okay? And rather not talk about the inner city community because of their insecurities, don't want to be attached to that community that gets shown. So I said, first of all, we want to make that clear. So you're talking about the inner city community, the one that you show on TV. Now that we got that clear, let me give you the answer. I said crack cocaine. Now, technically, because I'm a chemical dependency counselor, crack cocaine is not as high as it used to be. Actually, alcohol, okay, and pot in your community, okay? Let's get it real. But my answer to them was crack cocaine, and then I said I have to qualify that. I said your response in the 1980s to the crack cocaine is still affecting our community to this day. You cannot have that many men go into prison and bring them back out in the community and not bring a prison mentality to the community and think it's okay. The problem in the community for us is we make it seem okay too. See, we can talk all we want outside, and Mahmoud, he does a great job talking about the history, the policy, and we won't even talk about what's going on in our house. You cannot heal if you can't deal with what's going on in your house. We got in this room these young women that are experience either close to being violated or some kind of violation within their house. We don't even talk about that pain that we perpetrate on each other. We got kids out here who have been perpetrated upon by their family, by their community, and continually be there. We don't even talk about that, but we'd rather talk about the man. You can't talk about somebody who don't live in your house and then expect him to care. And you cannot expect him to give a damn when you don't take care of your own kids and you always got your hands out talking about, give me something to take care of my kids. Now, I am part of that generation of the talking heads, as I call them, who get on TV, talk all that trash, disrespect officials and themselves. Unfortunately, we got to remember, in our society, especially with young folks, we are a TV generation. Like it or not, Mahmoud. So we need to see some of them faces and them voices who are talking about progressive things, who are talking about making our community accountable to our kids and to our young people. You're right. There's a lot of us idiots who are old people who are talking a lot of trash who ain't giving you what you need. Because I'm not going to support ignorant behavior. I had a young man in my office yesterday. I said, you need to go get a haircut. And you need to pull up them drawers. And the young man looked at me like, ain't nobody ever said that to me. At least not the way I said it. I didn't say it in a manner that I was trying to disrespect that young man. He said he wanted a job. He said he couldn't get no job. Well, this might be it. Like it or not, you're in Minnesota. That's the other piece I have a real difficulty with black folks in Minnesota. You're in Minnesota. You've got to find some way to get along with white folks and quit irritating them, quit fighting with them. You don't have to like somebody to negotiate with them. And all of us who come, and most of us ain't from here, okay, most of us ain't from here. We're from someplace else where there might have been more black folks and we could talk crazy to each other. But this is not the place. And they're going to let us know this is not the place until we chastise each other. Until we say, and the voices I see up in here, get out and be public so those folks who don't know no better, know better.
My personal opinion about the jails, Mr. Michael, is basically we have a lot of subliminal messages in our community. Basically, they see the cities as the jungle, the animal to be the man, and jails to be the cells. Now, these basically alter one's thinking in our community. That's why we have so many jails anyway. And, like, I was watching a documentary the other day, and this one dude was talking about how he was comfortable in jail. And basically, you have your individuality stripped away from you in jail. You get up when they tell you to, you piss when they tell you to, you shit when they tell you to, you sleep when they tell you to. Even your time in the yard, you're also watched by a hunter. So basically, it's all of these little subliminal messages, and these are the ones that the younger community tends to go by because they think this is cool. And also when one tries to strengthen up their community, these are the ones who get shot down, the ones who are jumped, killed, murdered. And all of these deaths are basically proving this to be more like the jungle. Everyone's in it for themselves. But once someone tries to reach out and help somebody else, then you're vulnerable. And I seen it firsthand, and I was too young to even know what was going on. I was 6 years old. I never seen my father. My mom was an addict. I was born in '86. My mom was strung out on crack, but she did what she could. And my first time meeting my father, my uncle was the one who shot him from the back of the head in plain sight. And then also at 9, y'all remember the switches back in the day? Where your mom like, go outside and get me a switch? Alright. She sent me out to get a switch. I didn't come back for a couple days. A couple days later, I see her and 3 of my younger brothers murdered. So I was forced to grow up fast. But also, I knew that there was also another way. I could have just snapped off the handle and became a psychopathic killer. At that young age, your mind is tormented and way traumatized. You're too young to even know what's going on. And all of this happened before I was a double digit. But also, I was in foster care for as long as I can remember. I waited till 17, 2 weeks about to be 18 to be adopted. Most people drop out at like 9, 10 because the community views that as too old. I waited until I was damn near an adult. Because no matter what, you need a family, you need someone to go by. I never had that, so I had to basically raise myself and teach myself everything I know. And everyone, it's basically, there's a way out of no way. If you have a broken home, you can fix your home. You also have a legacy. I have a son, and I'll be damned to see my son go through anything I went through. And I know I'm young and I'm only 20, but I'm going to do what I can for my son, for my seed. I'm not going to be out here, oh yeah, GD, blood gang, whatever. I'm not going to be on that. I got someone to look after now. And this is most likely the other generation that's going to uprise. We have all of this material in front of our face to make a better community as well as a better country. Everyone already fought and died for what we have for today. And this is why we have the program here now. Like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, Rosa Parks. Everyone else fought and died for what we have. The opportunity to be together as a multiracial community. And no one wants to embrace this material, and it's just right there in front of you. All you have to do is grab it and use it. And if you don't know how to use it, at least ask for help. There's not people who's not going to help you. I basically had everything stripped away from me. I've been through homelessness. I've been through the little drug game. I've been drunk. I've been high. I've been, you know what I'm saying, all of this stuff. But also there's other ways to do it. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your time.
I'm going to make this as short and sweet as possible because I know we're trying to move on. The question was posed, what has happened and is happening? From a young man that grew up in North Minneapolis, born and raised, from my perspective, I graduated from college. I am one of the few successful young men that has grown up and come out of this city. From my perspective, what is wrong and what's going on? We spoke about broken homes. I think that broken homes, as well as, or not as well as, but broken homes and the extent of the house comes partially from the community as well, and not necessarily from the parents. For the most part, it does come from the parents, but in order for a parent to feel like they have to expect something from their child, they have to feel like the community expects something from them. So I think, for one part, it comes from the community. And I think the major thing, I think you spoke about whether youth feel insecure. I think that is our major issue from two different aspects. One, feeling inferior in your own community, you feel like you have no power, you have no control in your community, whether it be school, community, or any of them aspects. And on the streets, I had a situation in high school where I had a gun pulled on me. But not feeling inferior, it wasn't, and I graduated in 2000, it wasn't that big of a deal. Nowadays, if a gun gets pulled on you, somebody else has one, somebody's probably gonna get shot. And there's fear. So I think that's where most of the violence comes from. People fear each other way too much, so therefore people get killed. And then respect. This gentleman spoke about, and I touched on it. I'm touching on it because I thought it was important. Now I was going to touch on it. About the elder generation not having the ability to respect the youth. I think that is one major thing that we don't acknowledge as much, because our youth do have an extreme problem respecting our elders or anybody at middle age to a high extent. But I feel that comes from our elders not respecting our youth as well. And I know with me, I have a situation where I walk up to somebody and tell them I graduated from college, and they're like, oh, that's great. I'm proud you could do it. And for me, that's telling me on one side, I'm glad I did it, but on the other side, you didn't expect me to do it. So therefore, that expectation was not there. So I think that that is, for me, coming from the younger generation, one major thing that needs to be adjusted, and basically having respect for the youth and acknowledging, like you said, that they have minds. They are able, they just need assistance.
Excuse me. Is it possible to say something real quick? You spoke on it a little bit. To me, I mean, all of this stuff that we're talking about is very integral, but if we do not, as youth, teenagers, along with the elders, address the policies, then we will always be behind or running alongside this vehicle. Until we can get in the vehicle, slow it down, and actually break it down to its chassis, because the way we can feel the way we feel right now, if we all together don't collectively address the policies, then we're not actually dealing with the parameters that judge and gauge how we're dealing with and how we're reacting. You know what I'm saying? For example, if we're not dealing with the issues of banks being able to redline areas and begin the process of creating a ghetto and the block busting and things of that nature, then it's going to continue to perpetuate. Because what's happening is whatever wasn't necessarily addressed in the 60s moves on to the next generation with more force, to the point where it gets more flagrant, and more flagrant. Like me, I feel like I was lucky. I was at the tail end of the generation, so I got all the information, but for me, the information that I got at home versus what I seen in the community was not conducive, and I had to kind of fall to the ranks of whatever everyone else was doing. You know what I'm saying? But for me, working and being in the cut, being on the front line, these are the things that I'm dealing with. You know, everybody right now got anger. How many people here is pissed off? Hey, hold up. So, hey, I'm gonna do this again. How many people in here is pissed off about situations, or is everything cool for you? Because if everything's cool, now, as an organizer, that's the first thing we're gonna deal with. Who has that cold anger? Not the anger to burn something down, but that anger like, no, I'm pissed. But being pissed is not enough. What else are you going to do, and what kind of tools do you need to be able to deal with this systemic situation? Because if it's not dealt with at a certain angle, all this stuff that we're going to just continue to be pissed and then produce children in the parameter of these new policies that exist that are going to be pissed as well. So for me, I'm challenging everyone. I challenge myself. What can I actually do in terms of feeling like you can be more effective? Because I don't want to be up here jaw-jacking, you know what I'm saying? And then get off the stage and it's back to whatever, man. I'm up here because it's a real deal. I'm passionate, just like my man who was speaking up. He felt it. He had a lot of emotion. So anybody that got cold anger and is pissed off, holler at some of these people you see on stage and figure out what can we collectively do. One thing that the rich know, they know how to organize money and organize people, and that's why they can do what they do. As a community of low income, we don't understand the parameters that we're dealing with. We don't understand the infrastructure. If we know that the only, like if me and Mahmoud come down to the mayor's office, man, we pissed, man. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Okay, that's beautiful. Holler at my secretary. But if we come with all y'all and everybody in here got 10 people, if you bring 10 people, yo, we got 10,000, holler back. Then it's a whole nother story because they understand these people represent votes. And if we're not angling it like that, it's a done deal. We can continue to have these forums all day long.
Real quick, my name is Alana Weaver, and I'm from Detroit. This is my second time in Minneapolis, and I want to start by saying this is an amazing forum. We do forums like this in Detroit, and I'm learning so much from how you all are doing this intergenerational dialogue about these really, really important issues that are affecting not just Minneapolis, but Detroit and all over this country, and every community of color, poor community, every inner city community, and really everywhere. It's affecting everybody, whether they know it or not. But yeah, we were blessed to come out here as a part of the Twin Cities Celebration of Hip Hop that decided this year to bring youth organizers from all over the Midwest together so we could see the patterns in each other's cities and learn from each other's strategies and how to be more effective. And it's been an honor to be a part of that as well. In Detroit, just to start it off, we're the child homicide capital and have been for over a decade of the country. Just last year alone, we lost around 400 people, mostly young people, to gun violence. Just the day before yesterday, my best friend's godmother was murdered in a firebombing of her house. So it's something that's very real. I'm sure you can all relate from what I hear you saying. And what that's tied into, the group I work with is called Detroit Summer. We're an intergenerational group that's youth-led. And we focus on the issue of schools because, as a lot of you know, schools have been a tracking system for prisons. I heard the statistics, 3rd grade literacy rates is what prison bed plans are made from. So they decide the number of prison beds made that year from 3rd grade literacy rates. So basically our focus is that the schools are failing. I mean, we have one of the highest dropout rates. I want to say 4 out of 5 youth are dropping out of Detroit public schools right now. And so a lot of them leaving to other districts, but a lot of them just dropping out and getting caught up in, you know, different illegal industries, since there's one of the highest unemployment rates. It's all connected. So basically what our focus is saying, you know, the youth need to solve these problems. I know you said that, like, how are youth going to feel like they need to be a part of something if we're not putting the important questions in their hands to think about and decide and whatnot. And along those lines, I mean, the basic deal right now is that we got to come up with ways to include youth in solving these real problems, not come in school and just be doing, you know, math and trigonometry. It's like people pulling triggers constantly in their hood, you know what I'm saying? So we need to be talking about that in an everyday environment that's required or whatever, like a school type setting, but something that's not dictated to them, something that they dictate and actually are educating each other and actually leading the community through. And then it'll be kind of a revival of the type of things you were saying was happening in the 60s and whatnot, that the youth leadership that was supported and input from elders inside too. And then also, as far as like effective models, there's a really powerful group in Milwaukee. It's called the Campaign Against Violence. They're doing amazing work out there. Unfortunately, they weren't able to come this weekend as part of the Twin Cities Fest, but they do work all around their city for the last couple of years, where they do rallies in the hood to stop violence. They're actually having a rally in the, I want to say the first week of September. They'll just rally up and down the hood. They'll knock door to door. They have mostly youth that are doing this. And, you know what I'm saying, they're getting people involved. They're getting block leaders on every street, people who everybody on that block trusts. They're doing surveys, and they're connecting it to voting, but they're not just doing voting work, you know what I'm saying? They're doing everyday work that's necessary for people's survival and elevation. And then when voting comes up, they already got a block of people that's working together. So it ain't really, you know, just a once every 4 years type of thing that people don't trust you for after a while. You know, it's something that's constantly creating trust and community. And then along those lines, there used to be a group in Detroit called So Sad. It's actually evaporated thanks to the nonprofit industrial complex. Lost their grants and wasn't able to sustain, but Save Our Sons and Daughters was the name of it. It's some of the founders of Detroit Summer. If you're familiar with Clem Barfield. Oh, you know about Save Sons and Daughters? Oh, that's powerful. Okay, so you know about Clem and everything. And Clem has a saying, for every child that we lose to gun violence, we lose another to the prison system. The person who pulled the trigger, right? So the two are integrally connected, just like it's connected to unemployment, just like it's connected to the school system failing, it's connected to all these different issues, right? So my thing, like I just had an epiphany sitting here, you know, as a part of this dialogue when you said policy, and you know, there's a prison abolition movement going on. You know, Angela Davis is a part of that, and the prison abolition movement might sound crazy to a lot of people. What are we going to do to make our community safer? But we got to start asking the hard questions. How do we really make our community safer without looking to police or prisons to do that work for us? And so along those lines, you said policy, and the 13th Amendment says it outlaws slavery with the exception of those convicted of committing a crime. What if there was a national movement to change the 13th Amendment and actually make slavery totally outlawed without a loophole? And part of that will be the everyday process in every one of our communities, like what, you know, Milwaukee's doing or what we're doing in Detroit or what y'all are doing here, that everyday work to actually start asking those hard questions. How do we make our community safer from the ground up? But a policy level will be to actually overturn that 13th Amendment and say, let's really outlaw this slavery and really, really outlaw this kind of mentality that is superior over other people and actually have power together. And thank y'all so much for having Detroit here in this space. We invite you to come to Detroit and work with us too. You know what I'm saying? And I got brochures for Detroit Summer if y'all are interested. Thank you.
Shelly's going to take over from here. One of the things we've been kind of hinting at and that we're going to dive into is that concept of community. Because whether we're talking about policy like Shaka talking about, or whether we're talking about fear or respect like the brother who was just up here was talking about, it all revolves around community. You can't fight for policy. You're not going to go down to the mayor's office unless you have a community of people. You know what I mean? And you're not going to get rid of that fear or that respect unless you have a community of people in which they can be vulnerable and get rid of that fear and respect. So Shelly's going to take it from here and start to move past the, just what is happening, questioning into the why.
It's a good look. I like the way this discussion is going. I'm going to keep this real brief because I feel like we've already pretty much touched on what I'm about to ask. And the next logical question obviously would be why? Why are these things happening in the community? We've touched on it historically. We're talking about the COINTELPRO. We've touched on it culturally. We're talking about the disconnection in family. But, a lot of people have the question, like, really, why? Why was Baca killed? Why was Sterling killed? Why was Brian killed? Why was Marcus killed? Why was Fawn killed? Why was Styles killed? Really, if you sat down and asked a person who pulled the trigger, like, why? You're going to get a lot of, we talked about murder being a manifestation of anger. Well, why are we so angry? I mean, we could go on and on and on and on, and we all know that there's a lot of issues that we need to address. But we're going to get into start talking about community, which ultimately is the function of this forum, is to start drawing people back to that. And so I'm going to go ahead and keep it brief. Throw it to Donna. She'll give us a better aspect, a better definition on what that is. And I ask respectively that we do. I see everybody has a lot to say, but we need to keep our comments down to a couple minutes because this is, like Brian said, the heart of the conversation. It is probably the hardest question to ask and to answer. And it's probably the question that we ask where we always come into a conflict, like, why? Well, I feel like this, well, I feel like that. And as soon as we get to that point where we disagree, we turn away. And with this dialogue, we want you guys to allow yourselves to be vulnerable and listen, really listen to what people are saying and consider what everybody is saying, because that's the only way we're going to be able to come back is if we have the type of attitude to where we are a community. So I'll throw it to Dinah.
I want to thank everybody for coming. Hopefully this will be the first of many, many forums, and so hopefully I'll see everybody in this room again. We're asking ourselves why, and to be honest, as Shelley said, there are so many answers to that question. I think the root of it, though, is community and what has happened to the community. It's dissolved. You don't know your neighbor. You're lucky if you know one person on your block. I remember many years ago, Brian said to me that if one person has a problem, it's a problem. And I think that we've become such individuals that we're not moving towards the same goal. We're not a unit in neighborhoods. Kids don't feel like they belong unless they're in a gang, perhaps. They don't feel like they're moving towards the same goal. They're not in it together. It's every person for themselves. We need to ask ourselves what happened to the community. Why don't we watch out for our neighbors' children anymore? Perhaps if we watched out for our neighbors' children, we wouldn't have to worry about child predators. I could go on and on forever about this, but it's community. What happened to the community? Why aren't we collectively a group moving towards the same goal? Why aren't we watching out for one another? What happened? When did it start to change? Is it, like the gentleman said, is it a disconnect between generations? Why is there so much distance between everyone? I know some of the faces in this room, but I don't know as many as I wish I did. So I think that's where we need to go with this, is community. What happened to the community? So, why?
Well, for me, I love the old school. I mean, a lot of people think I'm young, but I was raised by a number of older people. And for me, instead of everybody picking up guns, I'd rather do it like this. I mean, if you got a problem with somebody and you feel to that point where you got that much anger built inside you, why not put some gloves on and duke it out? I mean, that's the way I look at it. I mean, it's not going to solve nothing, but it does solve a lot of murders. And, I mean, it's crazy. A lot of distant things in the community. I mean, we can keep on seeing and keep griping about it, but the way I see it is, in order for us to solve these issues on some real talk, like these young brothers and these young sisters said up here, we got to really, really sit down in our homes and really holler at our young people and be like, look, man, look, before you even go to the mind state of where you need to pick up a gun or you need to pick up a knife to solve these issues, man, why don't you just try talking to this individual and go from there? That's where it all starts. Conversation is the best skill that you can have and the best technique that you can have in order to solve a lot of issues. I mean, a closed mouth don't get fed at all. And I believe if we just, we got to really come together. I don't care if you're black, white, short, tall, skinny, fat, it don't even matter to me. Let's bring it together, let's unify and try to really make something happen, because otherwise it's just gonna be one circle. Everything's gonna just keep rotating back to the same shit, back to the same shit. And that's how I see it.
Both my parents are from South Carolina, so I grew up hearing all about community, and I grew up hearing about if, I was doing something wrong down the block, so-and-so's aunt would tell me to stop or tell me they were gonna whoop me or whatever else. So growing up here in Minneapolis, I guess I understood what it meant to live in a community, but I didn't really see it. I feel as if we don't value community anymore, just as some young people don't value life. I think that there are so many things that are not going on in the community where people don't feel as if they're included. There's nothing that fosters the feelings of inclusion. And so, I don't know, I'm kind of lost for words. Kind of what he said, I'm pissed, I'm ready. I don't want to talk about anything anymore. I'm ready to sit down, talk about what it is that we're going to do, not talk about what is wrong. We need to talk about what it is that we're going to do now, because we've come too far, too many people have died, we just need to do. So, like I said, I'm lost for words, I'm just ready.
The first thing I would say is let's first take an inventory of our community. Let's not talk about what's not going on. Let's acknowledge, first of all, what is going on. Because there is a lot of things that are going on over north, over south, St. Paul, and things of that nature. So that's one thing I wanted to throw out there. And then anything that we want, we can build upon what is already out there. And that's kind of like asset-based. Because when you're dealing with community and you automatically start off the conversation of what's not there, then you already, damn. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to like, okay, this is what we do have. One of the things that also takes place with policy and the parameters of things is internalizing the oppression that is put upon you to the point where you play out that situation without the oppressor having to do anything. And it goes back into the police and things of that nature. Like, especially for me, as a black male, you always think about color. I don't have the luxury to not think about color because it's constantly in my face. So to grow up as a male and to be a teenager when you're already feeling like people are not checking for you, they would come and break bread, not necessarily when you were doing wrong. Somewhere along the line, there got to be a point where there was fear, where we're out of control, to the point where they wasn't even addressing us in the right manner, to the point where it was a disconnect. So for me, a lot of times with the youth I'm dealing with, they just want to chop it up. They just want to talk. There's some trust. And a lot of times when you're dealing with these youth, sometimes they may not feel you off top. But that don't mean to just, okay, forget it. You try one time, bump it. Keep at it, because they need to see that. Okay, I didn't turn homie away hella times, but he's still on the block, he's still doing it. Okay, I'm gonna holler at him. He done passed the test. Because a lot of times there's also a trust issue. People that are from here to go to school come back. My man Brian Casora was talking about that. With all this gentrification, don't run off to Brooklyn Center. Ain't nothing wrong with Brooklyn Center, but let's come back with all of the things that we learned from college and break bread and set up these institutions. I can't do it alone. He can't do it alone. She can't do it alone. It's like a network, a spider web per se. Everybody brings what they have to the forefront. Everybody is basing things off the talent that they do have. And everybody's playing their position.
Why? That is the question, isn't it? Some men and women dream of things, look at stuff and ask why, and some dream of things that never were and ask why not. That is the question, why? I see we all have pads and pencils, and I want to ask you to do something for me. There are two books I wish you'd read if you hadn't read them. One is called In Struggle, just straight up. N-I-N, struggle, S-T-R-U-G-G-L-E. By Claiborne Carson, C-A-R-S-O-N. And those of you who haven't, please read the autobiography of Malcolm X. How many of you read? Great, thank God. We shouldn't have all these kind of problems. Thinking problems. You read Malcolm X. I mean, there's what it is what it is. He put it there, experientially. And how do you overcome? How does a nigger become a black man? He did it all, you know. That's what we used to say in the 60s. You know, every nigger is a potential black man. Black man, proud, socially responsible, respect black women. Just a black man. Don't drop seeds and say that's what a man is. That was preached before. That's why history is important. Let me give you a simple word for history. I know I'm going to get to the point. History is another word for humanity. History is what makes you a human being. That is why the first thing a oppressor does when he colonizes people is do what? Suppress their what? History and culture. Culture is the handmaiden of history. You can't have one without the other. Culture is produced by history. One is like having the left hand and the right hand. It's history and culture. So for years, you know this. No, you missed this now because we have black studies. But in my generation, people used to tell black people, you have no history. That's like saying you're not a human being. Everybody on the earth has a history and a culture. It may not be your culture or my culture, but everybody has some life way, some way of being, of knowing, of thinking, of feeling, of acting. I didn't say dancing yet in poetry. Some way of thinking. People think culturally. That's what a culture, and that's why there's no such thing as race. And we need to attack that. That's one of the things young people need to attack that's been imposed on us. You know, it took us more than a half century to get rid of the word Negro and be proud to call ourselves black. Because it's just everybody's some color, any color's all right. So I'm black. So what? The question is, am I a decent human being? Am I respectful? This is the question. Not how I look. That's what a human being is. And that's what Dr. King fought for, was what he called respect for human personality. He didn't say color. Respect. That's why I'm going to respect white people, the human personality. They're human. And I expect them to do the same thing to me. Because I'm a human being. Malcolm X's last speech. What I declare are rights. This is what we declare: to be a man, to be a human being, to have the rights of the human being, to be respected as a human being, to live in this society as a human being on this day, at this hour, and we intend to bring this into existence by any means necessary. I'm a human being. Now let's get that clear. And that's what much of this is about. That's what much of this is about. Are black people human beings in the eyes of the elites who run this country? That's the bottom line. That's what it's all about, folks. Okay, I'm going to give you 2 words. 2 books. You got the 2 books. It has been said that half of the solution to any problem is having the correct definition to the problem. That's what we have. We got problems right now with having the correct definitions. Because most of us try to solve problems ahistorically, without looking at the reference points for why we're doing what we're doing. So I'm going to say this. Why are we in the situation that we're in? Go on the dictionary, move from the dictionary to the internet, and study this word. Black people are in the position that they are in because they are an oppressed nationality. That's it. All over the world, that's the way it is. They're an oppressed Irish and North Ireland. You know, the Northern Ireland's the Catholic. They are an oppressed nationality. So get rid of the color thing right there. We're talking about the condition of people. And we've always been oppressed. And oppressed means that you are dominated and you don't have power and control over your life. We are an oppressed nationality, not a race. We ain't going there with that stupidity. We're an oppressed We're like a nation. It's oppressed within a nation. You follow me? Okay. The other word I would like for you to look up is, and focus on, it has everything to do with what we're talking about, is organize/organization. The greatest organizer black people ever produced was a man named A. Philip Randolph. How many of you have heard of him? Thank God. I mean, it's getting better for me, yeah. He's the greatest organizer. He organized 500,000 black men, brother of sleeping car porters. Anybody ever heard of that? That's the man who thought of the March on Washington. That's Martin Luther King's hero. He was looking up to that old man because he thought of that in 1941. And it didn't take place until 1963. And that came from what? Struggle. Not somebody sitting up and laughing. The struggle. And he said, at the banquet table of life, there are no free lunches. You get what you can take and you keep what you can hold. If you can't take anything, you can't keep anything. If you can't hold anything, you can't get anything. And you can't get anything without organization. You can't do that. The black community is disorganized and disarray. The direct opposite of what it was a generation ago. That's the problem. You just said that 100 times around here. And the last thing, I'm repeating myself, is we got to build institutions to protect young people. Institutions. Look that word up. That's nothing to play with. You deal with institutions every day. This is an institution. Black people deal with institutions, you know, banks, schools, hospitals, and not control one of them. That's the problem. The street that Martin Luther King was born on, Auburn Avenue in Atlanta, his house is still there. It used to be called Sweet Auburn. There was so much money there. It was one of the richest black communities in America was Atlanta, Georgia. At one time. You know why? Up and down that street you had just tons of little black businesses. And that's what drives the economy, little businesses. Anything, you rarely had to go out downtown. You know, for the big stuff, but you want food, but you know, I came out of the South, I was born in Georgia. You know, I thought all butchers were black, because that's all I saw. I never seen a white butcher. Now you can't find a black butcher. Isn't that interesting? How many of you ever seen a black butcher? The guy who cut the stuff up that you go. You're unusual. You must be from Texas somewhere. But lastly, Keith mentioned it earlier. Dr. Keith talked about policy. Look that up. Public policy. Public policies are made by governments, by the state, by the federal government, and they are always and forever, since the founding of this country, made policies over the life of black people. They're not just behaving that way. There's a reason why our families are broken up. Lastly, why is it that when I was coming along, black families were 80% stable, and people were upset because you had 20% of the people had single-parent homes. Now you know what it is? It's 40% stable. You understand? With two-parent families. How did that happen? That's the question I want to put on young people. And if you're serious about black people and solving the problems, you have to study. I'm sorry. You have to read. No people can understand themselves without studying themselves. What's the model of the Jewish people? And I love to talk about it because I think they're responsible. They study themselves. What happened yesterday? That's why they can say, never forget, because we know what happened when? Yesterday. And that's what black people have to do. We are anti-historical, we are anti-cultural in the main, because the schools are not going to do it for you. And this is not natural, it's not in the genes of these young black people to kill one another. That's not true, and I can explain that too. That comes out of history too. You know, black people have always been, males, the object of violence from slavery to now.
Thank you, Brother Michael. We're going to keep it moving a little bit here. I'm going to let my brother Dominique right quick wants to make a comment. We'll give him 30 seconds. Then I've got another, we're going to move into the next segue. I'm going to throw it over to my guy, Abdul. We're going to keep it going from that side.
Just to keep it real short, I was thinking this when Donna said something earlier. It's the whole, and it's become almost cliche, but it's so true, the united we stand, divided we fall thing. It's like, if you're trying to hang on to something, you have 10 fingers. But who's you to use both of your hands to hang on to it? You know, when we're trying to work together, just because he's not doing what I'm doing, doesn't mean that I can't work with him. I grew up with 7 brothers, and I graduated from Clark. He went to Howard. My other little brother went to Howard. Another one went to FAMU. One went to the U here. One went to Stillman. We all look so different. Like, we would sit at a table and break bread, and people would look at us like, wow, why do they hang out? Because we all realize that we need each other. Me and him, we battle all the time. We got different ideologies about things, but I enlighten him, he enlightens me, and we're able to move forward on things. So because I might be Muslim and he might be Christian does not mean that we can't work together. Because I'm from down south and he's from up north and he has a different idea of what the problem is. The problem is different. If I'm looking at her from this side and you're looking at her, you see the back of her head, I see the front, we see two separate things, but she's the same person. So from your angle, it's the back of the head and you feel like you need to solve because you want her to turn around and look at you. And it's like we need to understand that things are different for different people in different atmospheres, and that does not mean that it's not one common goal, you know. So my whole thing, you know, let's try not to shun each other because we have different ideas and different ways that we look at things, you know, because it's different for somebody down south. When I went down south, I did see a black butcher. You know what I'm saying? And I loved it, and that's the thing that made me realize going to Clark, you know, it's Clark, Morehouse, Spelman, Morris Brown. God bless Morris Brown, someone's gone. But it's like, within that community, I could walk over to my brother at Morehouse and holler at him, and then go get my sister at Spelman sometimes and holler at her, and then go over to Morris Brown when they was there and holler at them. We could get together and we could start to do things, and it was always better when we did it like that, instead of me just grabbing all the people from Clark and doing something. I would much rather have somebody with a different ideology than me, so I can figure out what's going on in a different area, because people are oppressed everywhere. People of color are oppressed everywhere. Light, dark, you know, midnight, high, yellow, whatever you want to call it, we all got problems and we all got things going on, so we need to work together, and this forum is beautiful, and I thank you guys for coming.
Alrighty then. This is beautiful. This is a beautiful thing. Let's keep it moving. Next, the next question, next logical question we would ask, which we probably already started to answer, is why is there no community? Where did it go wrong? When was it damaged or destroyed? So I'm gonna go ahead. We sat down and built and came up with a lot of different issues. I'm gonna throw it to Abdul, and then from Abdul, I want to go over here and address our brother Mays and Daryl. We know we ain't heard too much on that side.
Basically, we do agree that there is no community, and a lot of people have touched on the fact that there's a disconnect between the older generation and the generation of today. And one of the things that is lost was that one common vision, and that one common goal was not passed down.
They're working class, they're working poor, they're middle class. They are gay, straight, and everything in between. So when we talk about black community, we have to understand that we are all not the same. Which is to say that we can't expect at the same time that we should all behave the same. So there may be those who are middle class, upper class, who are not part of the inner city, but you have to acknowledge the degree to which that's a real black existence. They are blacks who seemingly, for those of us who are born and raised in the church, are gay. We may have a problem with that. We have to deal with the question of how do we want to understand the heterogeneity that exists in our community and still get things done. Okay, so we cannot continue to marginalize other people within our so-called community and neighborhoods because they don't represent a perceived image or representation of what we think black is or ought to be. We got to really be honest and deal with that whole question, right? That black people are all not the same. Okay, so number one. Number two, the whole question about community, well, I don't understand why we want to do it differently than other groups, which is to say that where are black people at the seat of power anywhere in this nation? Where do we have a stake in society? Why do we seemingly think that we can somehow do it on our own? We've been in this country 400 and some odd years, but we still don't have a seat at the various tables, whether it be economic, educational, social, etc., political, etc. You have leaders right now running for office, right? North side, south side. I don't know much about the black politicians here in the metro area, but I'm told, and I don't know if there are those in here who support Brother Keith Ellison. I was told yesterday Keith may not make it, right? If that is indeed the case, and if he is your candidate, and he does represent a new voice, the question becomes, here's a brother who's trying to gain a seat at the table to represent you, right? So when we talk about being pissed off, half of black students in Minnesota don't graduate from high school. Okay, I think we need to deal with the whole question about who is at the table to represent you down at the Minneapolis Public Schools, St. Paul Public Schools, at MDE, Minnesota Department of Education, to speak on your behalf. That is community. Leaders make community, okay? We all as collectives make community, as individuals, but your leaders bring what? Back to your community. They bring resources. Resources make community. Until we try to deal with that whole question about who is representing you at the seats of power, we will never have community.
I think one thing is, you said resources for the community. I think, I just say it like this. I used to go to the Y a lot when I was younger. And the reason why I used to go to the Y a lot was I used to go hoop, but at the same time, it was an older cat there that was going to give me some information that I need that day. You know what I'm saying? So it was just basketball. I used to go holler at an older guy. He used to just talk to me about real estate. You know what I'm saying? Instead of talking to you about a jumper or talking to you how to lift a weight or whatever, he was teaching me things that I need to know about in the near future. You know what I'm saying? I think that's one thing that's missing there is communication. You know what I'm saying? The ear to listen. You know what I'm saying? And then respond about it. You know, and it just it's just real deep, man. You know, it's just I just remember just me and my cousins chopping it up. You know, I just remember just sitting there, you know, and just chopping it up and talking about what we need to do. You know what I'm saying? And just actually listen to that old head and just listen and just try to respond and do something. You know what I'm saying? That's why I think it's going. I think that'll make the community stronger. And we just start listening to the older heads and actually responding and doing something about it. You know, that's how I just feel. I just made it real quick.
We got 2 comments right here.
I'm gonna try to be brief. 2 things I'm gonna get out there. From what I'm hearing, I just thought about it like as we are, you know, dialoguing about this. When we're born into this world, we have one thing, we have 2 things, which is life, and we're given a name. Our name is who we associate to. And as it stands right now, it's like we as a people are existing. We're not living, we're not surviving. And we constantly are going around the same circle. So how do we rise above? And, you know, we say come together. Then it's like what's stopping us from coming together? Then it's like, what do we identify with? There's an African philosopher who said, we are, therefore I am, therefore we are, which means we're interconnected. And Eurocentric thought is I am, you know, what I make myself. So I guess we have to go back to really, you know, understanding who we are and get our own identity and stop trying to be, you know, don't let the melting pot somewhat take our identity and kind of reconstruct it, kind of live it. And as our elder says, you know, study, know your history. The more you educate yourself, the more you be enlightened. Once you're enlightened, you can come and educate somebody. And as the saying goes, each one, reach one, teach one. So.
I had a comment. Usually when I say don't make too much sense, but one thing that I think is important is for us to stop being controlled by time. You know, it's like everybody looks at their 12 hours that they have in their day, their work day, or the time they're awake, and they prioritize that time according to how we're programmed to coordinate that, to look at that time. And I think in order for us to get active and to engage in our community, we need to make that a priority in our time schedule, you know, to make time for change, to, when we wake up in the morning, to have change be our priority. I know we all got to go to work, we got to eat, you know, people got kids and stuff like that, but I think that's why it's so important for the young people to get involved and to help us be motivated. For me, I'm no good to you guys. You know, I'm married with a gang of kids and all that, so I really can't help too much because my first priority is to make sure my mortgage is paid and that my kids are eating, but I'm really passionate about it and I'll do anything I can do. That's why we really need the young people to take the lead and to make sure that they're looking at that time frame like that when it comes to being action oriented.
My comment is more like words of wisdom from my mother before she passed. And I never understood what she meant until today. But she always told me, I will live tomorrow, the fool does say. For today is already over with and the wise lived yesterday. And that always kind of like threw me off because I never understood what she meant. But basically, if you live yesterday as if yesterday is your last day. Because tomorrow's never guaranteed. So do everything you can with the time you have, because later on is not guaranteed. We already know that. 40 plus deaths in Minneapolis, and we're already in August. The year's not even over with yet. All of these people thought that they had tomorrow promised. Tomorrow's not promised. After this meeting is not promised. It's just do what you can today for your people today. There is no tomorrow. We all need something today. And tomorrow may be too late. Thank you.
Yay.
Real brief. Everyone knows that August 1st was National Night Out, but you do not need an August 1st to block off your block, to meet your neighbors and to find out who they are. And I really miss Mahmoud el-kati. I'm going to say this. He used to speak down at a Haru bookstore in the back, and he had his hat. And you could toss something in there. And I wish another avenue was open for this brother to be somewhere, to be one of those older heads, to continue to give us the knowledge and information that he has. So I want to say that. But it's very, very important. I've heard policy, politics, organizing. It's very important that you get involved in your community. If you belong, I belong to Hawthorne Area Community. I go to my Hawthorne Area Community Council meeting, I go to Jack's. They're making decisions about our communities. They're making decisions about the houses that remain in those communities, whose house is going to get torn down, what they're going to do. Little things. It's not just at the city council. It's not just the president. Choices and decisions are being made in your community about you, your children, your taxes, and you really need to get involved. And it's very hard to knock on your neighbor's door because a lot of us don't want to talk to each other anymore. We're afraid of our own children and we're afraid of our neighbors, and we're afraid the mother down the street's going to come up the street and want to box us for checking her child. But if you get to know your neighbors and you make it a habit or you make it your business to know them, regardless if there's something, you know what they're doing. We all know what our neighbors are doing, and some of it's going on in our own houses, but we're a don't tell. We don't tell on each other. My son's dealing drugs. He's doing it right down the street in my house, but you don't want your son to go to jail, and we understand why. But still, we let it go on. Get involved in your community. Knock on the door. Get to know the kids. If you get to know the kids and the kids trust you, you get to know their parents. It's hard. But that's where you can start, in your community. Become organized. Become part of the policy. Become part of decision making, no matter what level it's on. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Hi, I'm probably the second oldest head in here. Mahmoud and I attended your classes at the University of Minnesota in 1969 and was privileged to do so. I did want to say that, and sort of focus on the how, because that's where I'm baffled. There's 6 generations of my family having grown up in Minneapolis, and so that sense of community I did watch go away, where our community now is more transient and we don't know our neighbors. The how part that baffles me is that those of us that are here today are talking about trying to figure out a way to resolve or at least address these problems. The folks in this room are not the folks running down the street shooting up people, I would guess, by and large. And my question for all of you then is, how do we embrace those young people to get them to where we are and have these concerns in our community? As my young children graduated from Washburn, they played on basketball teams, football teams, and we embraced the kids that we knew that had some difficulties in their families, and in many instances it worked, and God forbid a couple of them did end up going to prison or have been killed because we weren't able to address their issues. That's the question I would ask today. How do we embrace them and help them to get over this hurdle and make this community again?
I don't know if Mahmoud's the oldest head here or I am. I was just thinking, as somebody came up with one subject, and then there was another subject, and there was another subject, and I was thinking, if I weren't already involved in many different ways, if I was sitting here in the cloud, I'd be really confused as to where to begin. And then something struck me. There's something called Paint-a-thon, which is an interesting project. It's about 25 years old, 30 years old maybe. I don't know if people have heard about it, but it's a gang of people coming together in an organized fashion to paint somebody's house. Could be an elder's house. In fact, that's usually what it is. And we did that for a neighbor 15 years ago, when I was younger and she was way older. In any event, it was a positive kind of thing that brought people together to work on a simple project. It could be working on 5 houses. It could be, depending upon the energy that you find. It's sort of like a Habitat for Humanity, where people get together, and usually it's companies that do it now, where they get together and they give their people something positive to do. So what I was just thinking, maybe if somebody wanted to take the lead and find 5 elders in North Minneapolis or 10 elders in North Minneapolis and pick a Saturday and a Sunday and get somebody organized, you probably get the paint contributed and some skilled people that would be willing to give themselves. So it might be a place to begin, and then people could find some positive resolve to something, and then use that as something to get back together again to talk about how it went, what happened, and other things will come out of that conversation. But it was just something I was thinking about, so I just wanted to put it forward.
Brian and Gail, I know you're pressed for time. I wanted to say this. I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. That I very much, and I think others do too, appreciate what you're doing. This is a part of it. I mean, you got to say it before you can do it. You've got to talk about questions. Human animal is really a thinking animal. I don't believe there's no problem that's insoluble.
So when you leave here today and you see somebody that looks threatening, approach them. Get rid of the fear factor. That is what helps them dictate what happens in the streets, and that also helps keep them where they're at. Because people do not reach out and speak to them and say, listen, I know y'all here hanging out, but you know something, I think you really might like this. Just give it a try. Just kind of try to get through to them, because a lot of them are in the effort mode. They didn't get there on their own. There were times when the community was built on the community. The elders pretty much dictated what was happening on that street. If Mrs. Jones was on the porch, they were not going to clown. Today, Mrs. Jones can be on the porch and they're going to do whatever they want, but Mrs. Jones is alone. There's nobody standing with Mrs. Jones to say, hey, Peter, Paul, Bob, Bill, what are you doing? I saw what you did. If you do it again, I'm going to do something about it. What are you doing? You have to reach out to them, and you have to get rid of the fear factor. Otherwise, nothing is going to happen. And everybody can do that today. Everybody can do that when they walk out this door. It's the hip-hop fest. That's all.
All right, we got like 6 minutes. 6 minutes ago. So, we're going to try to wrap this up. And we did come prepared. So, we just kind of close our eyes and we're going to wing it and hope that it works out and that our preparation has put us in the right place. the most obvious final point is where we're trying to leave at, is how do we collectively start to solve these problems, which is what everybody up here has said at one point or other, and what Camille said, you know, what Shaka said, what Brother Mahmoud said, what everybody said, you know, and expressed their frustrations that it's not just about talking, it's about doing. And in taking my notes, I have 3 main bullet points. 1, we have to identify the roots of our problems and act on them. Having discussions like this is important. It's a necessary component. You can't just act and not talk. When I first called Brother el-kati, that's what he said. He said, I'm glad y'all are doing this because you have to talk before you act. Anybody who doesn't do that is foolish. Any action that doesn't come before thought and dialogue is bound for failure. Second, we have to identify guidelines on how to solve those problems, like Abdul touched on. We can't just give a goal and not have guidelines and a context to that goal. Like Abdul said, you know, you can't tell a child, you know, go after these, you know, quote unquote middle class aspirations. You know, go after a nice home and a nice education for your children and not give them guidelines within which to do that. Otherwise, they'll go about doing it by whatever means necessary, and that, you know, we think of it in a romantic sense as a good thing, but oftentimes for our generation, what any means necessary often includes destructive means. And we got to make sure that we set the guidelines on how we're going to pursue these goals, and that we say, okay, if it takes doing a destructive thing to get the goal, then the goal's no longer worthwhile, because it's not just the things that we're after rediscovering a way of doing things, and that's just as important as any things that we're going to get. The third one, we have to determine commitment and develop systems of accountability. One of the easiest things is something Gail mentioned to me the other day. We were talking about it, and he was just talking about just investing in the community, being there. And the sister who was just up here was talking about that. Be there. You know your neighbors. You know what I mean? You have to commit to that. You have to hold each other accountable. And if you're not there, no matter how much money you give, no matter how much anything you're doing, if your face and your presence isn't there, it's gonna diminish the effect that you have. We've been talking about community, and this is where I'm gonna kind of bring it home. And we have sign-up sheets around the room, and what we want to do is get focus groups going on, where people who are interested in certain areas or have skills in certain areas actually sign up and commit, and to hold each other accountable. And like Mahmoud said, actually doing some studying and some research on specific issues that you're passionate about. Everybody might not be passionate about music or film or public policy or education, but somebody is. 10 people are. 10 people are passionate about music. 10 people are passionate about history, and we need to bring that energy together into focus groups. And then next time we have a forum, we can bring all of us together, so that we, like Dominique said, we become circles who can, you know, at moment's notice, we can come together. But we're not just individuals just walking around here, and then when we get together, we have to start all over and start this whole long dialogue all the way from beginning of, you know, Western civilization all the way up till today. We can't do that every time. We don't have enough time to do that every time we meet. I have basically five basic areas of building community. Communication. Establish basic principles. Education and broadcasting what those principles are. Disseminating and passing down those principles, in other words. A commitment to those principles and the opportunity to space, you know, like a forum, etc., for everyone to make a collective commitment has to be provided. And accountability for each other's commitment to those principles. Now, the main thing that we're going to focus on right now is establishing basic principles. Communication is also a vital component. We've talked about that today, which involves things like being vulnerable and admitting our fears and facing them. And that's how you start dialogue and things like that. Like the sister said, like you can't engage nobody in a discussion unless you're willing to overcome your fear and you know, getting past this mug that they're giving you. If you can't overcome that, then you can't communicate with that person, and ultimately, you can't. You're not going to be able to help them really. if you can't look at somebody and help them when you see them, you can't substitute that for, I can't look at you now, but I'm gonna go, and help you indirectly through some other way. You know what I mean? And you can't even stand face to face with this person. And other things, just real quick, tie into communication are honesty, obviously, tolerance, open-mindedness, understanding, which we've all expressed and put into practice here today. Very important. Now, the main thing that I was talking about, the heart of this, is establishing basic principles. Things like equality, things like cooperation, things like unity, and most importantly, empowerment. And in empowerment comes action. And this is exactly what we're trying to talk about right now. And what we have three basic aspects of empowerment: economic, political, and cultural. And the late, great Harold Cruz was a professor at the University of Michigan. He wrote a book called The Crisis of the Negro Intellectual. It could just as easily be called the crisis of the intellectual, period. Whether you white, black, purple, yellow, anything. And in that, he stresses constantly over and over again how economic, political, and cultural movements or actions are interrelated, and you can't separate them from one another. And so basically what we did, we were up late till like 4 or 5 in the morning last night over at the Uptown Diner, basically trying to come up with certain aspects in each of these where people can focus on. And this is where the idea of focus groups came in. And so under economic, I just want to read these, and we almost are going to have to go. But
everybody that wants to sign up for economic stuff, I'll be outside.
We're all going to have to be outside pretty much. But we got pens for everybody. We got sign-up sheets. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to read them off and just make a mental note of what you're passionate about or skilled in or interested in, even if you don't know anything about it, but you have an interest in it. Yeah, no doubt. So the first aspect of empowerment was economic empowerment, and within that we have community banks and personal finance education. My friend James is a banker at TCF, but oftentimes when we talk, we talk in these big romanticized ideas, and he's like, "Well, B, I'm a banker. You know what I mean? I'm a teller at a bank. What can I do in my everyday life?" You know what I mean? And this is what we're talking about, making you relevant to a larger movement. And so if James is a banker, and I don't think he's here today, but this is what you can do, James. You see what I'm saying? And it starts to make practical sense. James, you have these skills. You need to be helping share those skills, not just at a bank behind a private institution's desk, giving mortgages when people come, but actually, like Gail said, taking the time out for change in your day and actually being a part of something that is helping you get your skills and your passion to the people. So that's one. So make note of that. And these are all economics. So Gail, who just left, has all of these. Independent record labels and artist cooperatives. I know a lot of folks in here, are doing their music thing, but it's not just good. It's not good enough to just do your music thing. We got to reconceptualize the way in which we do the music thing. You know what I'm saying? It's not good enough to get a record deal if that takes away, some of your power to move how you need to move for us, for each other. So that's also a part of the economic, which Gail has outside. Independent film associations, production studios, and cooperatives. Moving towards reconceptualizing this and brainstorming ideas to make this happen. Gail also has that. Cooperative distribution networks. Gail also has that. Basic living standards, public housing, etc. Gail also has that. And then the next aspect of empowerment was political empowerment. Community opinion focus groups / networks. Shelley has these. Shelley's right here. Community caucuses or / primaries to collectively endorse political candidates. You don't need the Star Tribune or even the Insight or even the Liberator or the Spokesman or the Urban League or the NAACP to endorse a candidate for you. If all of us decided to meet here next week and get together and debate until we figured out who we wanted to endorse and then made sure that all of us are going to go cast our vote, in line with what we've decided on as a group, that's a political endorsement. We've made a political endorsement as a group. It doesn't have to be a foundation or institution or organization. Institution and organization is what you make it. Just like Jesus said, a church is where 2 or more people gather. A church is what you make it. You know what I'm saying? The next one, voter registration. All these Shelley has. Police brutality / police watch groups. Independent media and grassroots journalism focus group, Shelley has this also. And like I said, I'm the editor of Liberator, so it's like there's no reason why anybody in here who's interested in writing shouldn't be writing, period. And that works for the spokesman, and you know what I mean? Mahmoud got ties to the inside. There's no reason. If you got something to say, the avenues are available. So Shelley has all of those political empowerment aspects. The next one is a little long and it's cultural, and I'm going to try to wrap it up fast. Abdul has the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these. And the first one is family structure and foundation. The second one is organic definitions of success. The third one is food, grocery stores, and agricultural education / preventative health. The next one is organic grassroots women's support and social groups, which is big for me as a man talking to women, that y'all ain't together for real. Like, and even men somewhat, but I witness it seriously that young women are very grouped off. We over here, this is my friends, and there's no movement to help heal each other, which is something that needs to happen. That's just my personal commentary. The next one is organic grassroots men's support and social groups. And again, Abdul has all these, and he's right there in the white shirt. And the last one that he has is Artistic Standards Association. For example, theater performing arts associations, music and film artists associations. And basically that would involve, brainstorming and trying to decide on aesthetics. And basically aesthetics is like a standard of beauty. You know what I mean? What type of music are we willing to accept and support? We have to start to distinguish lines between this. Are we willing to support this music if it's such and such and such and such, or are we not? Are we willing to support this if it's these things, or are we not? So if you're interested in any of those things, Abdul's right there. And the next one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 are Dinah. And Dinah is right here. And intensive community-based educational institutions, programs, and study groups. For example, the Communiversity, which is going on, or the Freedom School program during the summer, or even a new program, or whatever people are interested or passionate about. But the point is that there are things that exist that you can be a part of. Dinah has that if you're interested in getting involved in those types of things. Educational curriculum focus groups. There's no reason why you should have to be on the school board in order to give your 2 cents about what you feel your kids should be learning, or your brother, or you, what you feel you should be learning in school, and actually, starting to shape a vision for how you want your classroom and your curriculum and your textbooks to look. Dinah has those again. Charter, alternative, early childhood school design and planning focus groups. Dinah has that also. A couple of people I know, specifically Gail's wife, actually just got licensed to start her own Montessori school. The resources are there. If you're interested in it, Dinah's right here. Community-based college scholarship cooperatives. Me and my friend Andy actually, he came to me, he went to Dunwoody. He came to me and said, Brian, I got $500. If you can put up $500 through the Liberator, we can start a college scholarship and give somebody $1,000 every year. I said, bet, I got $500. I'll give you $500. Let's start a scholarship. Simple as that. He talked to the board at Dunwoody, and now we're going to have a college scholarship, and whether or not we have it in anybody's name or it's just an anonymous gift. Every year, somebody's going to get that money, and it's going to go to support somebody going to Dunwoody. That's something that we can do on a regular basis. If you're interested in doing anything like that, sign up with Dinah. Community dialogue forums and focus forums, which is basically something what we're doing right now. And I have in parentheses, it's something that ensures cross-generational dialogue. Somebody mentioned that, a space that ensures that you're getting it. Somebody mentioned having Mahmoud in a consistent space where people know he's going to be, where he's accessible to everyone, not only in fact, but also in perception. That's important. Community apprenticeship and internship opportunity network. Very big. If you have a skill, if you're working at City Hall or public housing or wherever, if you have your own business, if I have the Liberator, whatever, we need to make ourselves accessible. Why can't somebody come shadow me and figure out what it takes to put together a publication? Why should I be so stingy with my knowledge that I'm not going to let them do that? Make the room for them. You don't have, sneak them in. You know what I mean? If you got to ask your boss to bring a kid in and they say no, bring them in anyway. But we got to start making ourselves accessible to start teaching these skills and sharing how we do these things with people who want to know how to do them. So if you're interested in, trying to offer your skill or your occupation as an internship or an apprenticeship to somebody, sign up. Or if you're somebody who's looking for an internship or an apprenticeship with something that you're interested in, Dinah has that. And the last one was kind of like, the last minute idea was like an anonymous advice phone line and website where people could actually, and this would kind of just help with communication, where people could call in and leave a voicemail anonymously, and it would be transcribed and posted somewhere, asking questions and things like that. And it kind of goes back to just making ourselves accessible. But if you're interested in helping out, creating something like that, Don also has that. So we gotta get out of here, but I hope you've taken mental notes, and I hope you know who you're gonna go check out and sign up, and I hope you all do that. And the one thing that I really gotta make us do before we leave is just by a round of applause. I feel like collectively we need to decide if this is worth doing again. And so I would just like to open that up. And by show of applause. One last thing. The other thing is that by signing up with these groups and these interests, these focus groups, so to speak, it's also going to start to form a mailing list where we can reach out. And so next time, when it's time to put on this form, it's easy to contact you and tell you when, where, where to be, etc. And even invite you maybe to be on a panel next time, because we shouldn't have the same people, up here every time in front of us. We should be mixing and intermingling, and everybody should be able to transition between audience and stage.
I want to, anybody's interested, give you a number for working with the community. The number is 651-224-8715, 651-224-8715. If you're interested in, self-development and helping other people develop, say it again, 651-224-8715. This is a self-help, self-education effort, not unrelated to what Brian was talking about. If I may, Brian, I have the privilege of making a parting remark, which comes from wisdom, not knowledge. One of our ancestors wrote these words, and it applies to everybody. We just got to get out of this race stuff, Frederick Douglass taught us this. In the struggle for social justice, the only reward is to be in the struggle. And if there is no struggle, there is no progress. Men who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are men who want crops without plowing the ground. They want the rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean's majestic waves without the awful roar of its mighty waters. The struggle may be a moral one, or it may be a physical one, or it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. You find out what a people will submit to, and you'll have found out the exact amount of oppression and wrong that will be imposed upon them, and these will continue until they're restricted by words or blows or both. The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress. So then, black people will be hunted and flogged at the south, hunted and flogged at the north, so long as they submit to these devilish outrages and make no resistance, either moral or physical. Men and women may not get all that they pay for in this world, but they sure as hell must pay for all that they get.